I'm Michael Odom.
I'm Brandon Shields.
And I'm Craig Thomas, and you're watching the Midweek Crunch here at JacksonSun.com. Hi everybody, welcome to the Midweek Crunch at JacksonSun.com. My name is Craig Thomas. You guys know these guys, Brandon Shields and Michael Odom, sports reporters for the Jackson Sun.
They know you too.
Yeah, well, that's true. But anyway, it's going into week 2 of the high school playoffs. A very exciting time in the football season as we get down to some teams who have made some nice Cinderella type runs and trying to keep that going on, and then some other teams that have been really strong all year and trying to work toward that state championship possibility. We're going to start this segment, though, with the wins we thought were most impressive in the first round of the playoffs. And, Michael, the one that stood out to you, you're going to talk about Lexington over Ridgeway.
Ridgeway had a lot of, quality teams that they played all year. And, going to Memphis is never easy, but I thought that Lexington did a good job going down there, keeping their composure, and the number of points they put up on Ridgeway really surprised me.
Mm-hmm. To me was Jackson Christian over Waverly. This is a Jackson Christian team, came in with just 3 wins, so did well just to get into the playoffs, then getting a big win on the road in the first round of the playoffs. So that's impressive enough, but just the way they did it I thought was impressive too. If you read Brandon Shields' story on Friday night on the website or Saturday morning in the Jackson Sun, he talked with Todd Rowland about just sort of how the Eagles pulled that off, and Rowland developed a little bit of a trick when he saw that Waverly's defense was sort of over-committing on the running back, Clay Lewis. Had Will Bueller, the quarterback, keep the ball. 28 carries for 200 yards for their quarterback. I think when you can adapt that way, that obviously says something about your coach and sort of recognizing a potential asset, and then also just your players for getting the job done. So I think you have to give a lot of credit to the Eagles for the way they won that game.
Right, and also because that was the 4-1, we can pretty much assume that, we know for sure that Region 6-2A swept Region 5-2A. I don't know if that's a case that they can make to be the best region in West Tennessee, but they're the only region in West Tennessee. Don't know if they're necessarily the best, but they're definitely better than Region 5.
Yeah, at least, based on that anyway. And then, Brandon, you were going to talk about Huntington, a shutout win over Charleston County.
Yeah, this is the only one that we're going to talk about in this segment that was an upset last week or was not an upset as far as district seedings go. Huntington was the 2, hosting Charleston County the 3. But what kind of impresses me about it is the fact that they were down. We talked last week about them being down to their 3rd-string quarterback, and they still managed to shut Tri-Stone County out 39-0. Really good win for them. Gives me a lot of confidence in them as they go on the road against a tougher team this week in Nashville Christian. I don't know if they'll beat them, but I feel better about their chances than what I felt this time last week.
All right, well, hang with us. We'll be back in just a second and start breaking down each class. 4A through 1A and also Division 2A here in West Tennessee. We'll start with Class 4A in just a second.
The opportunities that lie in front of you are unlimited. Let us help you reach them. Whether you want to travel abroad, serve others in your community, or gain hands-on experience in your field, we can help you go far. Jackson State. Stay close. Go far.
All right, with week 1 of the playoffs in the books, let's talk about week 2. We've got a handful of local teams that are still in this thing, looking to advance even further in the TSSAA playoffs. We'll start with Class 4A, game right here in the city of Jackson, a pair of 9-2 teams. Game I'm going to be at. Lexington is at Northside. When you guys consider this matchup, it's a game we've seen before with Lexington winning pretty handily. Michael, what sort of jumps out to you about maybe this potential rematch?
I was there for the first meeting, and it wasn't that Northside wasn't in the game. They just allowed some things to get in their head and didn't, play a full 4 quarters. They kind of fell apart there in the 4th quarter and quit. I think this is a lot different Northside team than they were earlier in the season when they played the first time. I think they're mentally stronger, and they showed that the last couple of weeks by, putting some teams away that they should have, competing against tough teams like Hardin County. So, I think this is a different Northside team that's going to be ready to come out and, play at home for the second time against this team and try and come out with a win.
I remember when we were kind of breaking down that game the first time they played, we were both kind of shaky on both teams. We weren't real confident either one being definitely better than the other because they both had their moments of brilliance early in the season and they both had their times of struggle. This game was another time of struggle for Northside. Lexington had one more time of struggle the next week against Chester County. Since then, both of these teams have just constantly gotten better and gotten better and gotten better to the point that I think this game that you'll see Saturday or Friday night in the round 2 of the playoffs will be totally different from the one you saw in week 4.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying that Northside's necessarily going to win. I'm not necessarily predicting that, but I do think it'll be very different.
Right.
And it'll be really interesting to see who looks better in the more important matchup. Hardin County is 10-1. We've talked a lot about this team, especially its offense, but just really the season. The Tigers have had a great year. They're going to be going to play Memphis East, which is also 10-1. This is a tough assignment, Michael. What does Hardin County have to do to be at their best?
You know, Hardin County hasn't played well on the road for most of the season. You know, they went to Dyer County, one of the bottom teams in the region, and struggled. Went to Haywood and then had to pull one out late. It's going to be even tougher to go on the road to Memphis East. You know, Memphis East usually plays at the fairgrounds. You know, so they're going to have to go down into Memphis and be able to try and beat a very quality team that's been ranked number 3 in the state most of the year. That's going to take a good defensive effort. You know, Hardin County is going to have to shut down their speed. Memphis East is definitely an athletic team. And so I think it's going to be a defensive problem. The defense is going to have to shut them down for them to be successful.
It's really hard to kind of compare these teams against each other because, one, honestly, I don't know a lot yet about Memphis East. But just kind of comparing scores against their common opponents. They both, you know, had to fight pretty hard to beat Haywood, and they both beat Millington with what looked to be fairly easy scores. I'm sure the Hardin County people probably say it wasn't as easy as 35-14 might suggest. So, you know, on paper, this looks like to be a pretty even matchup. I don't know, though. I mean, just kind of going into that environment, like you said, you know, they have a hard time playing on the road. This is definitely going to be the toughest game they've had on the road because they had Lexington at home. They had Northside at home. I think they had Crockett at home. I could be wrong about that, but I think they did. So, yeah, this will definitely be the toughest test. And if they can pass it, I mean, I hate to say at this point, I will become more of a believer in Hardin County because I'm already a pretty staunch believer in them, especially since they blew my 5-5 regular season prediction record out of the water. But if they can do this one, they're a whole lot better than what I thought they already were.
All right, well, hang with us. We'll talk about Class 3A in just a minute. Time to talk about Class 3A as we go into the second week of the playoffs. Michael, we'll start with the game you'll be at right here in the city as Melrose comes to town to take on the 11-0 Liberty Tech Crusaders. Liberty, a little bit of a slow start last week. They need to be better this time against Melrose?
Oh, they're definitely going to have to be better against Melrose. They did not look good in the first half. They moved the ball down the field a couple times, but couldn't get anything out of it. They had to, you know, their first 3 drives ended on turnover on downs. You know, they tried to go for it on 4th down and they weren't successful. They're going to have to, you know, stick with their run game and be able to put points on the board. They can't. It seemed like last week they played like they already had the lead early on, and that can't happen. You can't. You've got to get that lead before you can play with the lead. Now their defense played well all 4 quarters, and I think that's going to be something that's going to continue. But it's going to be their offense has got to put points on the board.
Yeah, the defense has definitely been, for about the past month or so, has definitely been kind of the cornerstone for this entire team. And pretty much all the offense has to do is go out and score a couple of touchdowns, which is pretty easy to do when you got Chris Johnson and Corey Newble back there in that backfield. But yeah, I did take, you know, I was at USJ the other night and I was checking your Twitter for scores, and I was like, you know, I think one time I retweeted the 0-0 halftime. I said, wow, or something like that. Anyways, I did talk to another coach here in West Tennessee. Went down to Memphis last week for that Westview game. He said Westview actually outplayed Melrose the whole game. They just never could pull away, and then Melrose scores there late to win the game. If Westview can outplay Melrose, that tells me that maybe, you know, there's some issues there that they have a hard time dealing with some better teams, or at least well-coached teams, and which Liberty's a good team, and so far they've been a well-coached team. You don't make 11-0 without being well-coached either. So, you know, just also considering kind of what Liberty did to Westview, particularly in the 4th quarter when they played, week 5, week 6, somewhere in there. Liberty's got a shot at having another big game in this one, but they got to play. They got to start off better than what they did last week.
All right, Milan comes into the second round with an 8-3 record, fresh off a win over Bolivar. They will be taking on Covington on the road this week. Michael, what do the Bulldogs need to do to get a win on the road?
They're another one that did not play well in the first round. I mean, Bolivar was very close with Milan, and it wasn't, Milan was never really able to pull away. And now they're playing a much tougher Covington team. They're going to have to, up their play. They're going to have to be able to run the ball better. They weren't able to do that up the middle. Every time they tried it up the middle, it was stuffed. When they went to the outside, that was something that worked for them. So they're going to have to find out what works. And, this is definitely a winnable game. I think Covington was the only team. Covington is a team that's going to be tough to beat at home, but I think Milan can do it.
Yeah, there were actually people in Milan last week when they were looking at that Dyersburg-Covington game. They were more worried about if Dyersburg won than if Covington won. I really hope that they're not kind of overlooking Covington because they're the lesser two evils. Alabama accent really coming out, y'all. But Covington, they won the region, so they're obviously going to be a good team hosting Milan. I'm just wondering, Region 8-3A, it's not up to the standard of 7-3A, so I'm wondering how much of a challenge they're going to be. I think Milan can easily win this one. I will say this, though. One of the three of us called that game last week as being close between Milan and Bolivar. And, I'm just saying. It wasn't a shock to me.
Brandon hates taking credit for stuff, but eventually we get him to do it. Camden comes into the second round as 7-4. They'll be getting a visit from White House Heritage. What do the Lions need to do to get to the next round, Michael?
Camden struggled with the number 4 team out of this other region, and now they're going to have to play the number 2 team. Luckily, this game is at home, and I think that's going to be an asset for Camden. But, this is a very good White House Heritage team with a good record. Last week was the first time they had won a game out of region, and now they're going to have to do it 2 weeks in a row. I think Camden's got a tough test ahead of them. Not saying they can't win, but it's going to be tough on Friday.
Yeah, it will be. We had Camden head coach William Blow on the radio show this week, and I asked him about White House Heritage, just kind of what they're going to bring and stuff like that. He said they're better. They're a well-coached team. They're not as big or as fast as East Nashville, but they are well-coached and execute well. Here's what the good thing is about that for Camden. They're a wing T offense team. What does William Blow really like to run when he's in charge of an offense? Wing T, so he knows how to defend it as well. So I think this will spell good things for Camden. I'm not saying that they're going to win. I'm not saying that they're going to win by a lot. But what I am saying is they got a definite shot at getting back to the quarterfinals, which would be, I think, the first time maybe since 2010 they got to the quarterfinals. So they got a shot at it.
All right, hang right with us. We'll talk about Class 2A and Division 2A as well.
College life is all about discovering new opportunities, new ways of thinking and learning, discovering the latest in technology and innovation. A campus lifestyle that will mold you and help you develop into a well-rounded, successful individual. Start your next chapter in life here at UT Martin Jackson Center. Day and evening classes available, 6 bachelor degrees, North Jackson 45 Bypass, UT Martin Jackson Center.
All right, we're back. Time to talk about a handful more games here in West Tennessee involving some West Tennessee teams. One matchup that we've seen the last couple of years in the playoffs, not necessarily in this round, but has been a big playoff matchup in several recent years. Trinity Christian Academy in Adamsville. They'll be meeting in Adamsville, TCA 6-5, Adamsville 10-1. Michael, how do you assess this game?
This is another one of those games that they played earlier in the year, and Adamsville was able to get an easy win. I think this is a different TCA team. They've gained some experience since that loss because they were young this year. Everything they had lost last year, this was a tough run early on, playing some tough teams, and I think they're much better. And I think, we all know Andrew Goldsmith and what he is capable of, and if he's able to break free and score some touchdowns, it's going to, create some optimism for TCA, and if they can get some momentum, I think they have a chance in this game.
This was the third loss that TCA had in the regular season when they started off 0-4, and we documented very well the fact that the main difference between 0-4 and 5-1 the rest of the year is Andrew Goldsmith, the quarterback. I think we can also read a little bit into at least the caliber of opponent that Adamsville played, or TCA played that first month. I've had a few people tell me that they don't think that Goldsmith being a quarterback is going to make that much of a difference, that Adamsville will still out-muscle TCA and out-athlete TCA. I tend to think, even in those 4 losses, when Goldsmith was getting the ball, nobody was stopping him. So if he's taking the snaps and they're running out of a wildcat, Adamsville may be able to stop him or at least contain him and outscore him. But I don't know. I just, for some reason, I think TCA is going to make this a whole lot closer of a game than a lot of people think.
All right, another rematch in 2A. Jackson Christian kind of got a lot of people's attention earlier this season when they beat McKenzie in the regular season. They'll need to do it again if they're going to go any farther in playoffs. 4-7 Eagles taking on the 7-4 Rebels. Michael, what do you think happens?
I think McKenzie's a well-coached team, and they're going to go back and dissect that Jackson Christian game, and they're going to know exactly what to do. You've got a quarterback in Jack Serber, a 3-sport athlete that is very smart and a very good leader, and I don't think he's going to make sure his team is ready to go back and play Jackson Christian for the second time, because he does not want to see his senior season end in the second round of the playoffs.
No, he definitely doesn't want that, and it wouldn't shock me if we were to line the McKenzie team up in here in this room and gave them some truth serum and said, were y'all overlooking Jackson Christian that week? And we would get a lot of yeses. But Jackson Christian just kind of came out and just kind of popped them in the mouth and kept popping them in the mouth until they look up in the fourth quarter and they're down by 17. Wade Comer is one of the better coaches around here as far as like making adjustments and stuff like that. I don't think I heard some talk that he didn't really adjust as much as you would have expected him to in that first game, and maybe he was kind of foreseeing the future and saying, okay, we may be seeing these guys again in the playoffs or whatever. But I think it wouldn't shock me if McKenzie comes out as a totally different team in this game and gets a win in this one.
All right, in Division 2A, University School of Jackson got a nice win at home over Knoxville Webb this past week. Bruins are now 8-3. They've got a very difficult test, though, Michael, going to Franklin Road Academy, a team that's 11-0 and a state championship contender in D2A.
Right. FRA has been the top-ranked Division 2A team in the Division 2 poll all year. Undefeated. They've played the tough teams. They've played the BGAs and the DCAs and the Davidson Academies, and they've gotten wins in all of them. USJ showed a lot this past Friday in beating Knoxville Webb, but now they've got to go to Nashville and try and get a win, and they're going to have to step up their playing.
I think I put in Sunday's paper that the reason they won last week, or at least speculated, was because they changed the color of their helmets. What you see there, the black helmets. Obviously, that had nothing to do with it, but there was a little bit of a hop in the players' step last week, and maybe they were jumping a little higher, running a little faster, throwing the ball a little further, and they were definitely making hits a whole lot harder than when I saw them earlier in the year against TCA. If USJ is going to stay with Franklin Road Academy for 3 or 4 quarters in this one, they're going to have to do it the way they did it last week with defense and special teams. Those are 2 very important weapons, and then get out there and the line just needs to give Easton Underwood, Mitchell Bodford, and Holland Hawks and that whole crew time to do their job and just see what happens.
All right, Peabody, Dresden, Huntington coming up next in Class 1A. Stick right with us.
MILK. That spells milk.
All right, time to wrap this up as we preview Class 1A games involving some Jackson Sun coverage area teams here in the second round of the playoffs. A couple of West Tennessee powerhouses, frankly, actually a couple of state champions from last year. Believe it or not, Peabody at 9-2, last year's 2A champion, now playing down in Class 1A. Union City 11-0, they haven't lost, and heaven knows, it's been
week 1 of 13.
So yeah, we're talking years now. The Golden Tornadoes 11-0. They'll be hosting Peabody. Michael, what do you see out of this game?
Peabody's going to have to play much better than they did the first time to beat Union City. Union City is definitely on a roll. They have momentum. They obviously have a formula for victory, and it's worked so far for them for 40 games. I think they go into this week. Peabody's going to have to show something special to be able to beat Union City.
Yeah, they will have to show something special, and it's not like they played terrible in that first game. But I do agree with you; they do have to play better. One thing they got to do is they need Kendrick Malone to play the entire game. Although when he was suspended for that first half against Union City, they were up 14-0 at one point. But I think that was a little bit more due to Union City mistakes than it was Peabody's what Peabody was accomplishing. But Peabody proved that night that they can play with Union City. They just need to finish it out. It was tied 35-35 with 6 minutes to go. So just keep playing like they did for 3.5 quarters. Keep playing like that for 6 more minutes. Maybe make a couple of stops, force them into 4th and longs. I'm not sure if they've punted all year. I know I saw them go for 3 or 4 times on 4th down, no matter where it was on the field. Force them into that situation, make them make a choice, and then go out there and do your thing.
Not many teams in that winning streak have said, 6 more minutes and maybe we're there.
Exactly.
So, definitely a good
6 more minutes and we get to go home is what they were usually saying.
Yeah, exactly. Right. A couple of 10-1 teams. Dresden blew out Middle College, kind of as we expected, I think. They'll be going on the road to Carver, which is also 10-1. What do you see for this Dresden team?
Dresden could definitely not overlook Carver. I saw some stats that was put on Twitter from the Carver South Fulton game. I think they had 700 yards of offense.
Wow.
Their quarterback threw for like 489 yards. I mean, they were ridiculous numbers. And so if Carver's able to put up those type numbers again, Dresden's in for a battle. Now, I think Dresden's defense is a lot better than South Fulton's defense, and they're going to, Dresden knows how to defend the pass. I mean, they go against Dresser Win every day in practice, so passing is not going to be their weak point. I think they're just going to have to go down and try and contain this Carver offense.
Yeah, pretty much you made my point that Carver's defense didn't look like it was that great, so Dresden should be able to, whatever Carver can do offensively, Dresden should be able to say, I can do it too, maybe even do it a little better. And I think Dresden's defense is good enough to make a couple of stops on this Carver team. That maybe if they do win and they need to score 70 points, maybe they win 70-56 or something like that. I really feel bad for whoever the writer is covering that game because it's going to be hard writing that game on deadline. But yeah, but if there's any team in West Tennessee that I want to go with in an offensive shootout, it's going to be Dresden because of all the different options they have at their disposal. So, yeah, I have a good feeling for them this week.
All right, talk about options. A Huntington team comes to this game still lacking a couple of the options that it's had for earlier in the year, but figured out a way this past week and did so in impressive fashion, as we mentioned. Now at 10-1, the Mustangs going to National Christian, also 10-1. Michael, what does Huntington have to do to advance?
I think Zach Dotson's going to have an incredible game. He's kind of had to carry a lot of the load when we've had players like Dylan Johnson and Cade Pearson out injured. So he's going to have another big game, and he's shown that he's capable of that. He's capable of carrying a lot of the offense when other players are injured. And to go on the road to Nashville Christian, they played Nashville Christian 4 years ago when they made
2012. Yep.
When they made the state championship. They played them in the state semifinals and demolished them. Now, I think that Nashville Christian's a different team than back then. They were young that year. I covered that game. But Huntington knows that they can go and compete against a team like Nashville Christian.
Nashville Christian was young that year, and obviously they're older now. They got a couple of those guys that you saw that were freshmen that year are now have SEC offers. I think their running back is a UT commit. So they're definitely a good team coming into this one. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel better about their chances after what they did against Trousdale last week. Keaton Bailey is a freshman who's among our leaders in return yards. One, because he gets a lot of interceptions in the secondary, plus he's their punter and main kick and punt returner. And he gets a lot of yards. I think he's got scored all 3 ways this year. So he's got a lot of speed, knows how to handle the ball. So if they have him at quarterback, he's going to wind up being a valuable commodity for them in that position. Then you got Zach Dotson back there, who brings experience, and Tyrese Maven as well. There is a chance they could get Dylan Johnson back this week. I don't know if it'll happen. If they do, that's just going to add a little bit more to it and give them an even better chance to win this game.
All right, well, lots of high school previews and features coming up throughout the week, so make sure you grab a Jackson Sun when you're out and about. Make sure to go to jacksonsun.com, check out all the stuff that Brandon's putting together, getting us ready for week 2 of the TSSAA playoffs. Of course, on Friday morning, the blitz and stats as we kind of look at some of these games and just have a short synopsis of sort of what we expect to happen and what to definitely look for. And then Friday night on jackson.com, Saturday morning in your paper, you'll see full recaps of basically the scene in West Tennessee as we kind of recap week 2 and look toward the third round of the playoffs, which starts to get even a little bit more serious and a little bit more fun. So for Michael Odom and Brandon Shields, I'm Craig Thomas. Have a great day.